The smell hit me first, that sickly sweet cocktail of disinfectant, old wood, and something I couldn't quite name but had lived with for 11 years. Death, maybe, or just the slow rot of dreams deferred. My name is Taylor, and I'm 38 years old. I should probably be somewhere else by now, doing something else, being someone else. Instead, I'm standing in my childhood bedroom, staring at a family photo from 1995 where we all looked genuinely happy. Back when Dad could still walk without a cane and Mom didn't need me to cut her food into tiny pieces. Taylor, honey, could you help me with this? Mom's voice drifted from downstairs, weak but insistent. I set the photo on my dresser and headed down. The stairs creaked in all the same places they had when I was 12, sneaking down for midnight snacks. Now they just sounded tired. Mom sat at the kitchen table, struggling with the childproof cap on her medication bottle. Her hands shook. Parkinson's had stolen her fine motor control years ago, along with her ability to write, to cook, to exist independently. Here, let me. I twisted the cap off and shook 2 pills into her palm. Water? She nodded, and I filled her favorite mug, the one with the faded roses that she'd used every morning for as long as I could remember. Her fingers wrapped around it like it was an anchor. Your sister called, she said, not meeting my eyes. Which one? Laura, about the funeral arrangements. I felt that familiar knot in my stomach. Funeral arrangements? Mom, you're not. Oh, honey. She reached for my hand with her free one. We both know I don't have much time left. The doctor said a lot of things. I pulled my hand away, busying myself with wiping down counters that were already clean. You're still here. You're still fighting. I'm tired of fighting. The words hung between us like a confession. I stopped wiping and looked at her, really looked. When had she gotten so small? When had her eyes become so hollow? What did Laura say? I asked, though I already knew I wouldn't like the answer. She's flying in next week, Corbin and Ariel too. They want to discuss things. Things? The house, Taylor. What happens after? I laughed, but it came out bitter. Right, of course. They've been so concerned about the house all these years. Mom's face crumpled. Don't be like that. They have their own lives. And I don't. The question slipped out before I could stop it. We'd had this conversation before in different variations, but never so directly. Mom looked away. You chose to stay, she said quietly. Did I? I sat down across from her. Really? Because I remember Laura saying she couldn't possibly take time off from her law firm. I remember Corbin explaining how his tech job was too demanding. I remember Ariel posting Instagram stories from Cabo while Dad was having his second stroke. Taylor? I had a job too, you know. I had a life. I had David. Mom flinched at the mention of my ex-boyfriend's name. Good. She should flinch. He wanted to marry me, I continued, had the ring picked out and everything. But I couldn't leave you and Dad, could I? Someone had to stay. Someone had to care. I never asked you to. You didn't have to ask. I stood up, the chair scraping against the linoleum, because we both knew none of them would do it. The silence stretched between us, filled with 11 years of unspoken resentment and love twisted into something unrecognizable. Finally, Mom spoke. Laura mentioned something about getting the house appraised for estate planning purposes. Estate planning. I repeated the words like they tasted bad. How thoughtful of her. My phone buzzed on the counter. Laura's name flashed on the screen. Speak of the devil, I muttered, answering. Hey, Laura. Taylor, hi. I hope Mom told you I'm coming in next week. We really need to discuss the practical aspects of, well, everything. Practical aspects. The house, Taylor. It's a lot of property, and frankly, it's not in great shape. We need to think about what makes the most financial sense for everyone. Everyone, as if I was part of that equation. I see. And you've already started making plans? I've done some preliminary research, yes. There's a good realtor in town who specializes in older properties. I thought we could meet with him while I'm there. I looked around the kitchen at the water stains on the ceiling, the worn linoleum, the cabinets that hadn't been updated since the Carter administration. This house that had been my prison for over a decade. Sure, I said. Let's meet with the realtor. After I hung up, I found myself staring at that family photo again. 4 kids with bright futures ahead of them. 3 of them had claimed those futures. 1 had stayed behind to hold the fort. I wondered as I tucked the photo into my pocket if I was about to become homeless. Mom died on a Tuesday. The funeral was Thursday. By Friday afternoon, they were all here. I heard the cars pulling up before I saw them. Laura's pristine BMW, followed by a rental SUV that had to be Corbin's, and then Ariel's ridiculous white Jeep with the custom pink rims. The sound of car doors slamming echoed through the house like gunshots. I stayed in the kitchen pretending to organize condolence cards that didn't need organizing. Through the window, I watched my siblings emerge like they were stepping onto a movie set. Laura in her funeral black, still perfectly pressed despite the flight. Corbin in his standard tech bro uniform of expensive jeans and a button down. Ariel clutching her phone, probably already planning her family grief content. But it was the 4th car that made my stomach drop, a sleek sedan with Sanders Realty emblazoned on the side. Taylor! Ariel's voice rang out as they entered through the front door. Oh my God, this place looks exactly the same. She rushed toward me with arms outstretched, her designer heels clicking on the hardwood. I accepted her hug stiffly, breathing in her expensive perfume that couldn't quite mask the smell of cigarettes. Hey, Ariel, I can't believe she's really gone, she whispered dramatically, pulling back with tears that looked suspiciously camera ready. I keep expecting her to walk around the corner. Yeah, well, she's not coming back. Laura appeared in the doorway, followed by a man I didn't recognize, tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of confident smile that screamed money. Had to be Knox, the husband I'd only met at their wedding 6 years ago. Taylor. Laura's greeting was cooler, more businesslike. You remember Knox? Of course. Sorry for your loss, Knox said, though his eyes were already scanning the room like he was taking inventory. Corbin hung back, hands shoved in his pockets. Hey, Tay, how are you holding up? I'm fine. Good, good. Listen, we brought someone we'd like you to meet. He stepped aside, revealing a silver-haired man in a navy suit. This is Mr. Sanders. He's a realtor here in town. Mr. Sanders stepped forward with a practiced smile and an extended hand. Miss Taylor, I'm so sorry for your loss. Your family has asked me to take a look at the property just to get a sense of its current market value. I stared at his outstretched hand without taking it. Market value. Now I know this might seem premature, Laura interjected smoothly, but we need to be practical about the estate. The house requires significant maintenance, and frankly, none of us are in a position to take that on. None of us, I repeated. Well, you know what I mean. You'll want to get your own place now, start fresh. This house is too big for one person anyway. Mr. Sanders was already pulling out a tablet, making notes. Beautiful bones, though. These old Victorians have such character. With the right renovations, this could be quite the showpiece. Renovations, Knox said, his eyes lighting up. What kind of investment are we talking about? Hard to say without a full inspection, but I'd estimate anywhere from 60 to 80,000 to really make it shine. New kitchen, updated bathrooms, refinished floors. Ariel gasped. 80,000? That's like a whole influencer campaign budget. Which is why, Laura said, shooting her youngest sister a look, we need to be smart about this. The house has been in the family for decades, but it's become a burden rather than an asset. I watched them talk about my home, our childhood home, like it was a stock portfolio. Mr. Sanders measured doorways, Knox knocked on walls, testing for soundness. Ariel took photos, probably for her family estate story arc. The location is prime, Mr. Sanders was saying. Close to downtown, good school district. I think we could list it for 450, maybe 475 if we're patient. Split 4 ways, that's over 100,000 each, Corbin said, and I saw dollar signs practically flashing in his eyes. Actually, Laura said, pulling a manila folder from her purse, I've been looking into temporary housing options for Taylor just to make the transition easier. She handed me a glossy brochure. Sunset Manor Apartments, it read, featuring photos of cramped studio units with kitchenettes and fold-out beds. It's affordable, Laura continued, and they have a waiting list, but I pulled some strings. You could move in within the month. I flipped through the brochure, each page more depressing than the last. Shared laundry facilities, no pets allowed, rent that would eat up most of my savings within a year. This is a studio apartment, I said. It's cozy. And think of how much easier it'll be to maintain. No more worrying about leaky roofs or broken furnaces. Where exactly do you expect me to put 11 years' worth of stuff? Well, most of it is probably outdated anyway, Knox said with a dismissive wave. Fresh start, fresh stuff. Mr. Sanders cleared his throat. I hate to interrupt, but I do need to finish my assessment. The sooner we can get this listed, the better. Spring market is just around the corner. Of course, Laura said. Taylor, why don't you show Mr. Sanders around? You know the house better than anyone. I looked at their faces, expectant, impatient, already mentally spending their inheritance money. Ariel was back on her phone, probably posting about difficult family decisions. Corbin was calculating square footage. Knox was eyeing the crown molding like he was personally going to rip it out. And Laura. Laura was looking at me like I was a problem to be solved, an obstacle to be removed. You have 30 days, she said, tapping the brochure in my hands. I know it seems fast, but the apartment won't hold the unit forever. 30 days, to pack up a lifetime, to disappear quietly so they could cash in on the house I'd kept standing through 11 years of medical bills and midnight emergencies and slow, grinding heartbreak. I smiled at my sister. It felt like showing teeth. 30 days, I said. Got it. I waited until I heard their cars pull away before I allowed myself to fall apart. My childhood bedroom felt smaller than it had that morning, the walls pressing in like they were trying to squeeze the last bit of fight out of me. I sat on my twin bed, the same one I'd slept in since I was 8, and stared at the Sunset Manor brochure Laura had left behind. Studio apartment, 400 square feet, no storage. I crumpled it up and threw it across the room. Then I got to work. The filing cabinet in the corner had been my salvation for years. While my siblings lived their lives, I documented everything. Every receipt, every medical bill, every late-night phone call where they'd beg me not to bother them with updates about Mom and Dad's condition. I pulled out the first folder, medical expenses, Dad, receipts for wheelchairs, hospital beds, medications that cost more than most people's rent, physical therapy sessions, doctor visits, emergency room bills when he fell and I couldn't lift him alone. Total, $127,000 over 7 years. Next folder, medical expenses, Mom. The Parkinson's medications alone had cost a fortune. The special shower chair, the stair lift I'd had installed when she could no longer make it to the second floor. Total, $89,000 over 4 years. Then came the house expenses. New roof when the old one started leaking into Mom's bedroom, furnace repairs, plumbing emergencies, the wheelchair ramp I'd built myself because contractors wanted $3,000. I'd kept track of everything, every dollar I'd spent, every hour I'd worked, every sacrifice I'd made while Laura built her law practice, Corbin climbed the tech ladder, and Ariel built her brand. My phone rang. Evangeline's name appeared on the screen. Taylor, honey, how are you holding up? Evangeline had been Mom's lawyer first, handling the estate planning, but over the years she'd become something like a friend, the only person who'd witnessed firsthand what I'd been dealing with. They want me out in 30 days, I said without preamble. I figured as much. Your sister called my office this morning asking about probate timelines. She what? Don't worry, I told her the estate can't be settled for at least 6 months. Lots of paperwork to sort through. I pulled out another folder, this one labeled correspondence. Screenshots of text messages from my siblings over the years. Corbin, can't talk right now. Big presentation tomorrow. Ariel, family drama is so triggering for my anxiety. Laura, I trust you to handle whatever needs handling. Evangeline, I need to ask you something, hypothetically. I'm listening. If someone spent 11 years caring for elderly parents, paying for their medical expenses, maintaining their property, would that person have any legal claim to compensation? Silence on the other end. Then, are you asking about a caregiver lien? I'm asking hypothetically. Hypothetically, if someone could document their caregiving expenses and prove they provided services that would otherwise have cost the estate significant money, yes, they might have a claim. I opened my laptop and pulled up a spreadsheet I've been maintaining for years. Every grocery run, every prescription pickup, every night I'd slept on the floor next to Dad's hospital bed because he was afraid to be alone. What kind of documentation would someone need? Receipts, medical records, proof of residence and care, maybe some character witnesses who could testify to the level of care provided. I scrolled through my email looking for a specific message I'd received 3 months ago. There it was, historical designation inquiry. And hypothetically, if that same house had some kind of special status that might complicate a quick sale. Another pause. Taylor, what aren't you telling me? I clicked on the email from Moises at the County Historical Society. We'd been corresponding for months about the house's potential historical significance. Built in 1887, it was one of the few remaining examples of Queen Anne Victorian architecture in the county. The original owner had been a prominent local businessman. The house had survived 2 fires, a flood, and nearly a century and a half of family drama. I may have applied for historical landmark status. You may have? I did, 3 months ago. The paperwork should be finalized any day now. Evangeline laughed, actually laughed. Oh, honey, do your siblings know? They're about to find out. A historical designation would make the property much harder to sell. The restrictions alone would scare off most buyers. And if you have a valid caregiver lien, they'd owe me money instead of the other way around. Potentially, yes. How much are we talking about? I looked at my spreadsheet. 11 years of receipts and records and careful documentation, including lost wages from the job I quit to care for them, about $230,000. Jesus, Taylor, is that too much? Honey, that's probably not enough. Professional in-home care costs at least $4,000 a month. You've been providing round-the-clock care for 2 people for over a decade. My email chimed. New message from Moises at the Historical Society. Taylor, I have good news. The designation has been approved. Congratulations. You're now the owner of an official county historical landmark. I'll send the paperwork over this afternoon. I read the message twice, then started laughing. Not the bitter laugh from earlier, but something that felt dangerously close to joy. Evangeline, I need you to prepare some documents for me. What kind of documents? The kind that are going to make my siblings very, very unhappy. I'll be right over. After I hung up, I sat in the quiet house and listened to it settle around me. The creaks and groans I'd grown up with, the sounds that had driven me crazy during those long nights when I couldn't sleep because I was listening for Mom to call out or Dad to fall. This house had been my prison for 11 years, but it was about to become my fortress. The next morning I heard them before I saw them, voices drifting up from the kitchen, the clink of coffee mugs, the rustle of papers. They'd let themselves in with Laura's old key. I crept to the top of the stairs and listened. The market analysis looks good, Knox was saying. Sanders thinks we could have it sold within 60 days if we price it right. What about Taylor? Oriel's voice uncharacteristically serious. What about her? Laura replied. She'll adjust. She needs to learn to stand on her own 2 feet anyway. That seems kind of harsh, Corbin said. She did take care of Mom and Dad. She chose to take care of them, Laura corrected. Nobody forced her to stay. She could have gotten a job, moved out, lived her own life. Instead, she made herself indispensable and now expects us to be grateful. She gave up everything, Corbin said quietly. She gave up a retail job and a boyfriend who wasn't going anywhere, Knox scoffed. Let's not pretend she was sacrificing a career at Goldman Sachs. I gripped the banister so hard my knuckles went white. The point is, Laura continued, we can't let guilt drive our decisions. This house is worth almost $500,000. That's life-changing money for all of us. Especially for me, Ariel said. I've got some credit card debt that's getting pretty scary. See, we all have our reasons. Taylor will figure it out. She's tougher than she looks. I backed away from the stairs and got dressed quickly. I had somewhere to be. The County Historical Society occupied a converted Victorian mansion downtown, not unlike our family home, but better maintained. Moises met me at the front door, a stack of official-looking documents in his hands. Taylor, perfect timing. I just got the final approval from the state office. He was younger than I'd expected from our email exchanges, maybe late 40s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. The kind of person who genuinely cared about preserving history. This is really happening? I asked, taking the papers. Oh, it's happening. Your house is now officially listed on the County Register of Historic Places. Congratulations. I flipped through the documents, official seals, signatures, legal language that made my heart race. What does this mean exactly for someone who might want to sell? Moises winced. Well, that's where it gets complicated. Any buyer would have to agree to maintain the historical integrity of the property, no major renovations without approval from the Historical Commission, no demolition, no subdivision of the lot. And if they wanted to do renovations anyway, they'd need to go through a lengthy approval process, environmental impact studies, architectural reviews, community input sessions. It could take years. Most buyers won't touch a property with those kinds of restrictions. What about the current market value? Honestly, it probably just dropped by about 30%, maybe more. You're looking at a very niche market now. People who specifically want a historical property and are willing to deal with the bureaucracy. I tried to look disappointed instead of thrilled. I'm sorry, Moises said, misreading my expression. I know this probably complicates things for your family, but this house is a treasure. It deserves to be preserved. No, you're right. It does deserve to be preserved. He handed me his business card. If you need any documentation for insurance purposes or legal matters, just let me know. I've got photos, architectural surveys, the whole historical assessment. Actually, I might need copies of everything for my lawyer. Of course. I'll email you the complete file this afternoon." I drove home slowly, savoring the weight of the documents in my passenger seat. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw that Mr. Sanders had returned along with a woman I didn't recognize, probably another realtor or an appraiser. I parked and walked around to the backyard where I could hear voices coming from the kitchen window. "The comparable sales are encouraging," Sanders was saying. "Similar properties in the neighborhood have sold for between 420 and 480." "What about a quick sale?" Knox asked. "We've got a cash buyer interested." "Cash is always good. Might have to come down on price a bit, but we could close in 2 weeks." 2 weeks? Laura sounded pleased. "That's perfect." "What about inspections?" the woman asked. "This is an old house. There could be issues." "We'll sell as is," Laura said firmly. "Let the buyer deal with any problems." I pulled out my phone and called Evangeline. "It's me. Are you ready?" "I've got everything prepared. Caregiver lien documentation, historical designation papers, and a few other surprises your siblings won't see coming." "They're in there right now planning to sell to a cash buyer. 2 weeks." "Not if I have anything to say about it. I'll be there in 20 minutes." I hung up and walked back to my car, then sat there for a moment, watching my siblings through the kitchen window. They looked so confident, so sure of themselves. Laura was pointing at something on Sanders's tablet. Knox was nodding approvingly. Ariel was taking selfies with the family meeting in the background. None of them had bothered to ask where I'd been. None of them had wondered what I might be planning. My phone buzzed with an email from Moises. "Complete historical documentation as requested," the subject line read. I opened it and saw dozens of attachments: photos, surveys, legal documents, correspondence with the State Historical Commission. Everything I needed to turn their simple real estate transaction into a bureaucratic nightmare. I got out of the car and walked toward the house, the historical designation papers tucked safely in my purse. Through the window, I could see Laura signing something while Sanders watched approvingly. Time to crash their party. I opened the front door and called out, "I'm back. Don't sign anything yet. We need to talk." The voices in the kitchen went quiet. I heard chairs scraping, footsteps approaching. Laura appeared in the doorway, pen still in her hand, looking annoyed. "Taylor, we're in the middle of something important. Can this wait?" I smiled at her, the same smile I'd given her yesterday, all teeth and no warmth. "Actually, no, it can't wait, because what you're about to sign is going to be a very expensive mistake." They all stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "Taylor," Laura said slowly, "what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that you can't sell this house." Knox laughed. "Of course we can sell it. We're the heirs." "Are you?" I pulled out my phone. "Because I think you should wait for my lawyer before you sign anything." "Your lawyer?" Corbin stepped forward. "Taylor, what's going on?" "She's here," I said, watching through the window as Evangeline's silver Honda pulled into the driveway. "Why don't we all sit down and discuss this properly?" Laura's eyes narrowed. "I don't know what game you're playing, but—" "No game, just business." I opened the front door before Evangeline could knock. Perfect timing. Evangeline walked in carrying a leather briefcase and wearing the kind of smile that had probably terrified opposing counsel for decades. She was smaller than my siblings expected, barely 5'4" in her sensible heels, but she commanded the room immediately. "Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Evangeline, Taylor's attorney." Sanders stood up nervously. "I'm not sure we need lawyers involved at this stage." "Oh, but we do." Evangeline set her briefcase on the kitchen table with a decisive thunk. "Especially since you were about to make a very costly error." "What error?" Laura demanded. Evangeline opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "Well, Let's start with the fact that this property can't actually be sold in its current state. That's ridiculous, Knox said. Of course it can be sold. Not when it has a lien against it. Evangeline pulled out a document and placed it on the table, a caregiver lien in the amount of $237,000. The room went dead silent. What the hell is a caregiver lien? Ariel whispered. It's compensation for unpaid caregiving services, Evangeline explained calmly. Your sister has been providing round-the-clock care for your parents for 11 years. Professional in-home care would have cost the estate approximately $4,000 per month. Taylor provided that service for free. She wasn't providing professional care, Laura sputtered. She was just living here. Living here and administering medications, managing medical appointments, providing physical assistance, maintaining medical equipment, coordinating with healthcare providers, and serving as primary caregiver for two individuals with significant medical needs. Evangeline pulled out another stack of papers, all documented with receipts, medical records, and testimony from healthcare providers. Sanders was frantically typing on his tablet. I I need to make some calls. This changes everything. It gets better, Evangeline continued. She pulled out the historical designation papers. As of yesterday, this property is officially listed on the County Register of Historic Places. What does that mean? Corbin asked, though his voice suggested he already knew it wasn't good news. It means any sale would require approval from the Historical Commission. Any renovations would need to maintain historical integrity. The buyer pool just shrunk to about 12 people in the entire county, and the market value dropped by at least 30%. Knox's face was turning red. You can't do this. You can't just sabotage the sale. I'm not sabotaging anything, I said. I'm protecting my interests. Your interests? Laura stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. This is our family home, our inheritance. And I'm the one who kept it standing for 11 years while you three built your careers. Nobody asked you to do that. Somebody had to do it. The words came out louder than I'd intended. Mom and Dad needed care. They needed someone to make sure they took their medications, someone to drive them to appointments, someone to be there when they fell or got scared or couldn't remember where they were. You could have put them in a facility, Corbin said quietly. With what money? Do you know how much memory care costs? $3,500 a month minimum each. We would have burned through their savings in 2 years. So instead, you burned through your own life, Ariel said, and for a moment she almost sounded sympathetic. I made a choice, and now I'm making another one. Evangeline pulled out one more document. The caregiver lien takes priority over any other claims against the estate, which means even if you could sell the house, which you can't, given the historical restrictions, Taylor would be entitled to her compensation first. How much? Laura's voice was barely a whisper. $237,000 plus interest and legal fees. Sanders was packing up his tablet. I'm sorry, but I can't represent a property with this many complications. You'll need to resolve these issues before listing. Wait, Knox said desperately. There has to be a way around this. There is, Evangeline said. You could buy out Taylor's lien, pay her what she's owed, and she'll release her claim. With what money? Ariel laughed hysterically. I can barely make my minimum credit card payments. Or, Evangeline continued, you could accept that Taylor has a legitimate claim to this property and work out an arrangement that's fair to everyone. Fair? Laura's voice cracked. She's stealing our inheritance. I'm claiming compensation for 11 years of unpaid labor, I said. Labor that saved the estate hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is insane, Knox muttered. There has to be a way to fight this. You're welcome to try, Evangeline said pleasantly. I'd be happy to see you in court. I have 11 years of documentation, medical records, and testimony from healthcare providers who can attest to the level of care Taylor provided. How's your documentation looking?" The silence stretched out until Sanders cleared his throat. "I'll be going now. Call me when you've resolved these matters." He practically ran for the door. After he left, my siblings sat there staring at the papers spread across the table like they were written in a foreign language. Finally, Laura looked up at me. "What do you want, Taylor?" I looked around the kitchen, at the water-stained ceiling I'd patched myself, at the cabinets I'd painted 3 times to keep them looking decent, at the table where I'd sorted pills and filled out insurance forms and held my parents' hands during their worst moments. "I want what I've earned," I said. "I want what's mine." "And what exactly is that?" I smiled at her again, and this time it felt genuine. "Everything." The word hung in the air like a slap. "Everything?" Corbin's voice cracked. "Taylor, that's not reasonable." "Reasonable?" I laughed, and it came out sharp. "Was it reasonable when I called you crying because Dad fell and I couldn't lift him, and you told me you were too busy with a product launch? That's not Was it reasonable when Mom was having panic attacks at 3 in the morning and I texted all of you for help, and Ariel told me she couldn't deal with negative energy right now?" Ariel's face went white. I was going through a really hard time. We were all going through a hard time. The difference is I stayed and dealt with it. Knox slammed his hand on the table. "This is extortion." "No," Evangeline said calmly. "This is contract law. Taylor provided services, the estate benefited, and she's entitled to compensation." "She lived here rent-free for 11 years," Laura shot back. "She lived here as a caregiver. The estate saved money by not having to pay for professional care or assisted living facilities." "I can't believe you're doing this," Ariel said, tears streaming down her face. "We're family." "Are we?" I looked at each of them. Because family would have helped. Family would have visited more than twice a year. Family wouldn't have left one person to handle everything alone. "You never asked for help," Corbin said. "I shouldn't have had to ask. They were your parents, too." "Don't you dare!" Laura stood up, her face flushed with anger. "Don't you dare act like you're the only one who loved them." "I'm not acting like anything. I'm stating facts. I was here. You weren't." "Because I had a career. I had responsibilities." "And I didn't?" "You had a part-time job at a bookstore, Taylor. I'm a partner at a law firm. I have clients depending on me, cases that affect people's lives. And I had 2 dying people depending on me. But I guess their lives didn't matter as much as your billable hours." Laura's face went from red to white. "That's not what I meant." "Isn't it? Because that's exactly how you acted, all of you." Knox was furiously typing on his phone. "I'm calling my lawyer. This can't be legal." "Please do," Evangeline said. "I'd love to explain to another attorney how caregiver liens work." "This is bullshit," Knox muttered. "Complete bullshit." "You know what's bullshit?" I turned on him. "You showing up here with a realtor before Mom was even cold in the ground. You measuring rooms and talking about new kitchens while I was still finding her medications in my coat pockets. We were being practical. You were being vultures." Ariel sobbed louder. "I can't handle this. This is so toxic. I need to call my therapist." "Your therapist?" I stared at her. "You have money for therapy, but not for helping with Mom's medical bills?" "Mental health is important. So is physical health. So is not dying alone because your family can't be bothered to visit." "That's enough," Corbin said, but his voice was shaky. "Taylor, I get that you're angry." "Do you? Do you really? Because I don't think you have any idea what the last 11 years have been like for me." "Then tell us," he said quietly. "Tell you what? About the nights I slept on the floor next to Dad's bed because he was afraid to be alone? about watching Mom forget my name and then remember it and cry because she was so scared, about giving up David because I couldn't leave them. You didn't have to give up David, Laura said. Yes, I did. He wanted to get married, start a family. How was I supposed to do that while caring for two people who needed round-the-clock attention? You could have hired help. With what money? You all knew the medical bills were eating through their savings. You knew and you didn't care because it wasn't your problem. We sent money, Ariel protested. You sent $1,000 once for Christmas. That covered about 3 days of Dad's medications. The room fell silent except for Ariel's sniffling. I kept track of everything, I continued. Every doctor's appointment I drove them to, every prescription I picked up, every night I stayed awake because one of them was having a bad episode, every birthday party I missed, every date I canceled, every opportunity I passed up because I couldn't leave them. Nobody forced you to keep track, Knox said. Nobody forced me to care either, but I did, because they were my parents and they needed help and nobody else was going to do it. Evangeline gathered her papers. I think we've covered the main points. You have my contact information if you'd like to discuss a settlement. Settlement? Laura's voice was hollow. Taylor is willing to negotiate, but the lien stands until it's satisfied. What if we contest it? Knox asked. Then we go to court. I have 11 years of documentation. What do you have? After Evangeline left, my siblings sat in the kitchen like they'd been hit by a truck. Nobody spoke for a long time. Finally, Laura looked up at me. I never realized, she said quietly. Realize what? How much you gave up. Yes, you did. You all did. You just didn't care because it was easier to let me handle it. Corbin rubbed his face with his hands. So what happens now? Now you figure out how to pay me what you owe me, or I keep the house. And if we can't pay? I looked around the kitchen one more time, at the place that had been my prison and my responsibility and my burden for so long. Then I guess you'll finally understand what it feels like to lose everything. Knox stood up abruptly. I'm not listening to any more of this. Laura, we're leaving. Knox! No, this is insane. She's lost her mind. He stormed towards the door, then turned back. This isn't over, Taylor. Not by a long shot. The door slammed behind him, rattling the windows. Laura looked at me with something that might have been regret. I'm sorry, she said. For what? For all of it, I guess. But she followed Knox out the door anyway. Only Corbin remained staring at his hands. I really didn't know, he said finally. Yes, you did. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I guess I did. Then he left too, and I was alone in the house that was finally, truly mine. 3 days passed in blissful silence. Then Laura came back. I was in the garden pulling weeds from Mom's old flower bed when I heard the car door slam. Laura's heels clicked across the driveway with military precision. Taylor! I didn't look up from the roses. Laura, we need to talk. I thought we already did that. Knox hired a lawyer, a good one. I sat back on my heels and finally looked at her. She was wearing her courtroom armor, the navy suit that meant business, the briefcase that had probably cost more than I used to make in a month. And he thinks we can challenge the lien. Prove you were living here for your own benefit, not just as a caregiver. Good luck with that. Taylor, please, can we talk like adults? I stood up, brushing dirt off my knees. Sure, let's talk. We went inside, and Laura sat at the kitchen table like she was preparing for a deposition. She pulled out a legal pad covered in notes. Knox's lawyer thinks we can argue that you were a tenant, not an employee, that you benefited from free housing and therefore can't claim the full value of caregiving services. Interesting theory. He also thinks the historical designation might be challengeable if we can prove you applied for it specifically to interfere with the sale. Also interesting, Laura looked up from her notes. You're not taking this seriously. Oh, I'm taking it very seriously. I'm just not worried. You should be. This could drag on for years, cost you everything you have in legal fees. Could, but it won't. How can you be so sure? I sat down across from her. Because I have something you don't. What's that? The truth. Laura's pen stopped moving. Taylor, I have medical records showing I was listed as the primary caregiver on all of Mom and Dad's insurance forms. I have testimony from their doctors, their physical therapists, their home health aides. I have 11 years of documentation proving I provided care that would have cost the estate hundreds of thousands of dollars. But I have photos of me helping Dad with his physical therapy, videos of me teaching Mom how to use her new medication dispenser. I have receipts for every medical supply I bought, every modification I made to this house to keep them safe. Laura's face was getting paler. I have text messages from all of you declining to help, emails where you explicitly told me to handle whatever needs handling. I have phone records showing how rarely any of you called to check on them. That doesn't prove, and I have the Historical Society's records showing I first contacted them 2 years ago, long before Mom died, because I was worried about what would happen to this house after she was gone. Laura set down her pen. So please, I continued, tell Knox's expensive lawyer to bring it on. I'd love to see him explain to a judge why 3 successful adults couldn't be bothered to help care for their dying parents. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You abandoned them. I didn't. Now you want to profit from their deaths, and I'm not going to let that happen. Laura was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out another document. Corbin wants to offer you a settlement. What kind of settlement? $50,000 cash. You release the lien, we sell the house, everyone walks away. I laughed. 50,000? That's not even a quarter of what you owe me. It's fair. It's insulting. Taylor, be reasonable. This house isn't worth what it used to be. The historical designation killed the market value. Even if we could sell it after repairs and realtor fees, we're looking at maybe 300,000 total. Then I guess you're stuck with it. What do you mean? I mean, I'm not taking $50,000. I'm not taking any settlement. I want what I'm owed, or I keep the house. Laura leaned forward. You can't afford to keep this house. The property taxes alone are $12,000 a year. The insurance, the utilities, the maintenance. You'll be broke within 2 years. Maybe, but it'll be my choice to be broke. This is insane. This is justice. Laura stood up abruptly. Fine. You want to play hardball? We'll play hardball. Bring it on. We'll contest the will. Claim you exercised undue influence over Mom and Dad in their final years. Go ahead. I have witnesses who can testify that I encouraged them to stay in touch with all of you. I have records of me begging you to visit more often. We'll claim you isolated them. I drove them to every family gathering you bothered to attend. I made sure they called you on your birthdays even when you couldn't be bothered to call them on theirs. Laura's composure finally cracked. Why are you doing this? Why are you destroying our family? I'm not destroying anything. I'm just refusing to be destroyed. We're your siblings. You're strangers who happen to share my DNA. Real siblings would have helped. Real siblings wouldn't have left me to handle everything alone. We had our own lives, and I didn't? You think I wanted to spend my 30s changing adult diapers and sorting pill bottles? You think I enjoyed watching the people I love slowly disappear? Then why did you do it? Because somebody had to. Because they were scared and sick and dying, and they needed someone who gave a damn about them. Laura gathered her papers with shaking hands. This isn't over. Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet. She headed for the door, then stopped. You know what the worst part is? Mom and Dad would be heartbroken if they knew what you were doing to this family. No, I said quietly. They'd be heartbroken if they knew what you did to me. After she left, I went back to the garden. The roses were blooming despite the neglect, despite the weeds, despite everything. Mom had planted them 20 years ago, and they'd survived every harsh winter, every drought, every crisis, just like I had. I pulled another weed and smiled. Let them bring their lawyers and their threats and their righteous indignation. I wasn't going anywhere. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, exactly 3 weeks after Laura's last visit. Thick cream paper, law firm letterhead, the kind of envelope that meant serious business. I opened it while standing in the kitchen, still wearing my gardening gloves. Dear Miss Taylor, it began, after careful consideration of the legal complexities surrounding the estate of your parents, our clients have decided to withdraw their challenge to your caregiver lien claim. I read it twice before it sank in. They were giving up. The letter continued with legal language about amicable resolution and avoiding protracted litigation. But the bottom line was clear: they couldn't win, and they knew it. My phone rang before I'd finished reading. Taylor? Corbin's voice was tired. Did you get the letter? Just opened it. We're done fighting. Knox's lawyer said we'd spend more on legal fees than the house is worth, especially with the historical restrictions. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd had our confrontation 3 weeks ago. So what happens now? Now you get what you wanted. The house is yours. We're signing over our shares of the inheritance. All of you? Laura's not happy about it, but yeah, all of us. I waited for the surge of triumph, the vindication I'd been craving. Instead, I felt oddly hollow. Corbin? Yeah? Do you hate me? A long pause. I don't know. I'm angry. I feel like you ambushed us. You ambushed me first, with the realtor, the apartment brochure, the 30-day deadline. That's fair. Another pause. I keep thinking about what you said, about Dad being scared to be alone at night. He was, especially after the second stroke. I should have known that. I should have asked. Yes, you should have. I'm sorry, Taylor, for all of it. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am sorry. I looked around the kitchen, at the water stains I'd learned to live with, at the cabinets that needed painting again, at the window that looked out on Mom's roses. Thank you for saying that. What will you do now? With the house, I mean. I don't know yet. Live in it, I guess. Figure out what comes next. Will you be okay, financially? The question surprised me. Why do you care? Because despite everything, you're still my sister. Am I? I hope so. After we hung up, I walked through the house room by room, the living room where Dad had spent his final months, watching old movies from his hospital bed, the bathroom where I'd installed grab bars and a shower chair, Mom's bedroom still smelling faintly of her lavender lotion. The silence felt different now, not oppressive, but peaceful. Mine. A knock at the door interrupted my wandering. I opened it to find a woman about my age holding a clipboard and wearing a Riverside Historical Society t-shirt. Ms. Taylor, I'm Janet from the Historical Society. Moises asked me to stop by with some information about grant programs for historical property maintenance. She handed me a thick packet of papers. There's funding available for roof repairs, foundation work, even period-appropriate renovations. Since your house is now officially designated, you qualify for several programs. Grant money? Up to $50,000 over 5 years, depending on the project. The state really wants to preserve these old Victorians. I flipped through the paperwork, seeing dollar amounts that would cover the repairs I'd been putting off for years. There's also a tax credit program, Janet continued, Historical properties get significant breaks on property taxes, could save you thousands annually. I had no idea. Most people don't, but you've got a real treasure here. The Society would love to feature it in our annual home tour if you're interested. It's great publicity, and participants usually see an increase in their property values. After she left, I sat on the front porch with the grant application spread around me. The evening air was warm, carrying the scent of Mom's roses and the sound of children playing in the neighborhood. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hi, Taylor. This is Ariel. I know things are weird between us right now, but I wanted you to know I'm starting therapy. Real therapy, not just Instagram wellness stuff. Maybe someday we can talk. I hope you're okay. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, I hope you're okay too. Another text came in, this one from Laura. The house is yours. All paperwork will be finalized by Friday. I need time to process everything, but I want you to know I don't wish you ill. No apology, but from Laura, it was something. I looked up at the house, my house now, officially and completely. The paint was peeling, the gutters needed cleaning, and the front steps were still wobbly. But the bones were good. The foundation was solid, just like me. A car pulled up, and Evangeline got out carrying a bottle of wine and a manila envelope. Thought you might want to celebrate, she said, climbing the porch steps. Final paperwork came through. You are now the sole owner of this beautiful disaster. Beautiful disaster? I like that. She handed me the envelope. Deeds in there, along with some other documents you'll need. And Taylor? Yeah, I'm proud of you. What you did took courage. It took desperation. Sometimes they're the same thing. We sat on the porch as the sun set, drinking wine from coffee mugs and watching the neighborhood settle into evening. The house creaked and sighed around us, but it sounded like contentment now, not complaint. Any regrets? Evangeline asked. I thought about my siblings, about the family we'd been and the strangers we'd become, about the years I'd lost and the life I'd chosen and the price of standing up for myself. Ask me tomorrow, I said, but I was smiling when I said it. Sometimes victory tastes like dust, but it's still victory.